When 70-year-old Frank began falling without warning, he thought it was just old age. But an unexpected visit to a mysterious healer changed everything. "Your legs are messengers," she said. "They're warning you something is coming." What followed felt impossible, but every fall had a meaning.
Frank had just stepped out of the bathroom when it happened. No dizziness, no pain, just a sudden, almost gentle give in his knees and then the cold, hard floor against his cheek. He blinked, disoriented, staring at the hallway tiles. Toby, his old terrier, barked frantically from the kitchen. He sat up slowly, rubbing his elbow. It wasn't the first time, this month or the second. He glanced at the small console table, still perfectly upright, no edges bumped or items knocked over. There had been nothing in his path, no slippery rug, no reason. But the strangest part wasn't the fall. It was what he heard the moment he hit the floor. A soft hum, like the low vibration of a cello string just for a second, not from the house. From inside him, deep in his legs, almost like a warning.
Frank didn't tell anyone. He drove himself to the clinic the next morning, downplayed the fall, and left with the same old answer: age-related muscle weakening. Nothing to worry about, just be careful. But Frank knew his body. He didn't feel weak. He still chopped firewood. He walked Toby twice a day. And yet, these sudden collapses, they felt deliberate, like something was pulling his legs out from under him. That night, he opened a blank notebook and wrote one sentence. Fell again. No warning. Felt like a message. Over the next 2 weeks, he kept tracking. He logged the exact time, the weather, what he had eaten, even what he had been thinking about. He was searching for something, a pattern, a clue, anything. But the pages remained a scattered mess of scribbles, until one note stood out, felt a bosom like his just before falling. He circled it, underlined it. His heart started to race. Something wasn't right. It was on a rainy Thursday afternoon when Frank met her. He was limping slightly through the local farmer's market, trying not to let it show. The stalls buzzed with chatter, the scent of ripe peaches and warm bread hanging in the air. As he reached for a jar of honey, a hand touched his wrist light, but firm. "Your legs are not failing you," a voice said. "They're trying to speak." Frank looked up, startled. The woman before him was maybe in her 60s. Sharp gray eyes, a scarf around her head like she'd walked out of another time. He gave a tight smile, unsure if she was joking. "Excuse me." She let go of his wrist. "They're warning you, that's all." And just like that, she turned and vanished into the crowd. Frank stood frozen. His heart pounded in his ears. He hadn't told anyone about the notebook, or the humming, or the falls, and yet she knew. He couldn't get her out of his mind. That night, Frank sat in his recliner with the notebook on his lap, flipping through the entries again. The patterns still made no sense, but her words echoed louder than any of them. "They're warning you." Warning him of what? The next morning, he returned to the market. Same time, same stalls. No sign of her. He wandered aimlessly until he reached the far end, where a small flower shop stood, one he had never noticed before. There, tucked behind the roses, was a narrow wooden door with a faded sign, "Consultations by appointment only." Before he could knock, it opened. She stood there, as if she'd been waiting. "You came," she said softly. "Good. That means you're starting to listen." Frank hesitated, caught between skepticism and a pull he couldn't explain. "I don't believe in psychics," he muttered. She smiled. "Good, because I'm not one." Then she stepped aside and motioned him in. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. Candles flickered on wooden shelves lined with stones, feathers, and glass bowls filled with herbs. It wasn't a fortune teller's lure, more like a forgotten study carved out of time. Frank sat across from her at a small round table. She didn't ask his name, didn't need to. Instead, she placed her hands gently on the table, palms up. "Your legs, they're messengers," she said. "When the body breaks without cause, something deeper is speaking." Frank scoffed quietly but didn't interrupt. She closed her eyes. "There is a rhythm to your falls. Not random, not medical. The energy around you is shifting, and your body is the first to notice. Most people silence it. You've started to listen." Frank leaned back, unsure whether to laugh or run. Then she added, "You have a journal?" You're trying to track the signs, but you're looking with your eyes when you should be listening with your feet. His spine went cold. He never told her about the notebook. That night, Frank dreamed again. But this time, it wasn't like the usual hazy flickers of memory. It was clear. He stood on a narrow dirt road surrounded by fog. In front of him, 3 figures walked barefoot: his grandfather, his father, and himself. They moved slowly, almost in rhythm, and then, one by one, each of them stumbled. Frank tried to call out, but couldn't speak. He looked down and saw that his own legs were trembling not with fear, but with warning. The ground beneath them pulsed, as if something beneath the earth was about to break free. He woke breathless, a cold sweat soaking his shirt. His calves itched. His knees burned faintly, like they'd been used for something he can remember doing. Later, flipping through the journal, he found his own scribble from a few nights earlier, buzzing in my legs before sleep. Rain followed the next day. And now this dream? It didn't feel random anymore. 2 days later, it happened. Frank was walking Toby past the gas station when his legs suddenly locked. Not buckled, locked, as if refusing to move. He stumbled to a bench nearby, heart pounding, legs stiff as iron. Toby whined, confused, and then a deafening explosion. The gas station across the street erupted into fire and smoke. People screamed, glass shattered, alarms howled. Frank sat frozen, shielded by a row of hedges and a wall. Right where his legs had stopped him, firefighters later said, it was a faulty underground line. Cold killed a dozen people. If the timing had been different. Frank didn't say a word about his legs. But that night, he returned to the journal and wrote just one line. They knew. Then he circled the date. Twice. The next morning, Frank returned to the flower shop. She didn't look surprised to see him. I think you're ready, she said, placing a small bundle of dried herbs and a smooth stone in his hand. But you need a practice. A way to listen properly. She showed him something simple, almost silly at first. Every morning, she said, place your feet flat on the ground. No shoes. Close your eyes. Ask your legs one question. What do you feel today? Then stay still. Let them speak. Frank raised an eyebrow. You expect them to talk. They already are, she replied. You've just been too loud to hear. That night, before bed, he did it, not expecting anything. But in the quiet, toes pressed to the wooden floor, he felt it, a faint pulse of ripple under the skin, a pull towards something. Not fear, just direction. It wasn't about falling anymore. It was about following. Frank stopped telling people he was clumsy. He let them believe it was arthritis or age. It was easier that way, but in secret, he changed everything. He canceled a planned trip the night before a storm destroyed the highway. He stocked candles and water 2 days before the town's power grid failed. He avoided a large gathering at the community center just because his legs felt off that morning, and each time, something happened. He never said I knew, never bragged, just listened. He walked differently now, slower, more aware, as if every step had meaning. Sometimes he'd stand barefoot in his garden, eyes closed, just feeling. His daughter thought it was part of his mindfulness routine, but Frank knew better. His legs were no longer betraying him. They were guiding him. On the morning of July 17th, Frank couldn't get out of bed. Not because of pain, because his legs wouldn't let him. It wasn't fear. It was resistance, like 2 anchors keeping him grounded. He sat in silence, lit a candle, touched his feet to the floor, and waited. That afternoon, the radio crackled to life. Statewide emergency declared. Mass blackout. Authorities urge everyone to stay indoors. Frank didn't move. He'd already filled his pantry, charged every flashlight, checked on his elderly neighbors 2 days earlier. He was ready, not because of luck, because he had listened. As the sun dipped behind the hills and the town went dark, Frank whispered the words he'd once thought were nonsense. Thank you. And for the first time in weeks, his legs were completely still.